Welcome, everybody. Today we are in the VeriSM Digital Transformation Defining Doing. This is a webinar from the series of webinars of VeriSM Unwrapped and Applied that has the same name of the second book of VeriSM that it's going to be launched soon. And later in this presentation, you are going to find all the details regarding the books and the trainings and the certifications. Today we are with some speakers, with important speakers that they are part of the Author Leaders group. Today we're going to be with Claire Agutter, we're going to be with Johann Botha. Suzanne van Hove excused herself in advance because she's flying out to another countries, and then she's time zone is going to be fully different, so she's not going to be with us today. And also we are with our guest Martin Adams that is going to perform a presentation regarding his own company for me. That is going to be really interesting for you to understand how they are applying VeriSM nowadays into their customers, into their own organization. So now I would like to say welcome, Johan. The floor is yours. Have a great presentation.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for joining. This will be the last of our pre-launch webinars where we actually talk about some of the content in VeriSM Unwrapped and Applied. The agenda for today is I'm going to run you through the first part of the book. So last week we had a webinar with Suzanne where we talked about the second part of the book. Specifically, we talked about the management mesh, how you can build the management mesh, and how your management mesh is used as you define, produce, provide, and support products and services within the organization. So if you haven't heard that, the link is on the VeriSM website. It was recorded. I would really encourage you to actually go and spend some time and actually have a look at that webinar. Today's agenda is really the things that need to happen before we can start building a management mesh. And literally what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through the structure as it is published within the book, and then we're going to have a chat with Martin on their application of VeriSM within their tool set. So in the previous session, we talked about this middle part, the management mesh, and how the mesh helps us to define, produce, provide, and respond or support products and services. But today, really, the focus is on governance and the principles that these two elements actually are the input into the management mesh and everything that we do within the organization. So in essence, what we're going to do is we're going to create a awareness within the governing body within the organization in terms of their roles and responsibilities for digital transformation and building products and services that is appropriate for the digital age. So they need to understand stakeholders, the market, the environment. They need to define who the organization is. They need to define what value for customers or consumers are. They need to provide strategic direction. They clearly, as it is governance, need to think about things like control and performance and so forth. But what's quite often underrated as a responsibility for a governing body is their job is actually there to make sure the management of the organization and the staff of the organization has everything that they need to succeed so that we can reach our goals and objectives. So without any further ado, let's jump right in it. Unashamedly, we've borrowed from 38500 the governance model, and you must probably know that many other best practices or good practices has borrowed this model, and the reason for that is quite simple. It's an excellent governance model. So we say the governing body within the organization basically has only got three tasks. They need to evaluate, they need to give direction, and they need to follow up and make sure that that direction was acted upon. You'll see that there's also some other arrows going into the block. So Clearly, you need to understand the context in which you operate, both from a macro environment in context, but specifically in terms of understanding what your consumer body actually requires from your organization. And then obviously there need to be some feedback from in the organization itself. But people in generally don't quite get what the evaluate bit is all about. It's more than just getting feedback from the organization. Yes, it's important to get that internal requirements back from the organization. And yes, it's important to have a view of performance and compliance. But it's also important to actually have a view of the skills and capabilities within the organization, because that tells us what we can do. Yeah, we need to have a view of the legislative and the statutory requirements for the organization. We need to know and understand what our local, the moral and our social obligations are. We need to clearly understand what the macro environment is, and that macro environment specifically needs to be broken down. We need to understand who our stakeholders are, what are their needs. We need to specifically focus on stakeholders that's maybe that want us to fail, like our competitors. So understand the market, understand the competitive nature of the market, our competitors, what they're doing, and so forth. And clearly, we need to understand what our consumers or our customers require from us as an organization. But we also need to constantly ask ourselves, as an organization, we've defined who we are and what we stand for. But we need to review and refresh that process. So evaluate is about the governing body really understanding to a great amount of detail all of these factors, because we need these factors to be able to give direction, or we need to understand these factors to be able to give direction to the organization. But there's something that happens between evaluate and direct, and that something is called our organizational strategy. Now, within VeriSM, clearly, because we're talking about the digital age, we really worry, at least in the beginning, about a digital transformation strategy, which will most probably in the beginning run in parallel with our existing strategy. But clearly, what is best at the end of the day is if it just becomes our organizational strategy, a digital strategy for the organization. So that's the little bit that's missing between evaluate and direct. And the moment we've defined that, then we can actually start providing guidance to the organization in terms of what is it that the organization need to go and do and achieve. So normally that direction is given in the form of policy, goals and objectives, defining principles, but also very importantly, defining who needs to do what within the organization, ensuring that we've got the right resources within the organization to be able to translate the strategy into something workable, products and services that our consumer need and want. The way that we express it in VeriSM is by defining a organizational portfolio, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that later. So in essence, I think the first part of the book to a large extent focuses on this area of strategic planning, so the evaluate and direct area. What I'm going to do next is I'm just going to go through some of these elements of direction that we give to the organization, because that's really important. It becomes the input into us being able to act upon direction, number one, and number two, it becomes the input into us being able to define the management mesh, which basically creates the capability within the organization to act upon the strategic intent of the organization. So in VeriSM, we define that the things that we need to be able to give the management body that need to respond is what we stand for, our principles. We call them service management principles, policy and goals and objectives. And as I've mentioned in the new book, we've also added the concept of an organizational portfolio that we'll explain a little bit further. What is also interesting to note is that all three of these original elements that we've talked about in the first book, principles, policies, and goals and objectives, all of them need to cascade down the organization. So you're most probably quite familiar with the issue of goals cascades within the organization. It's actually not a new idea. It's an old idea. You most probably would have seen it in something like Lean or in COVID. The idea actually originally comes from Lean, from the concept of Ocean Conry. So we need to understand that the governing body gives high-level goals and objectives that needs to be broken down until every individual's goals and objectives are defined. And in that way, we know that when something is done within the organization, it contributes to us reaching the organizational goals and objectives. So we're not doing work that's not necessary or wasteful. Similarly, there's a cascade around principles. And one of the things that we heard people were saying in the first book, we gave some examples of service management principles. And they said, but yeah, this doesn't make sense because some of these principles are operational, some of them are strategic. And that's exactly what happens within organizations. Our values determines the principles we define within the organization. And within this context, what you'll most probably find is that there are some principles that's defined at a strategic organizational level. Then there's some principles that are defined at a practice or a domain level. Most of the time, either tactical or operational. And then there are some principles that are defined at an operational level. So if we take the example on the slide here, the value of customer centricity may translate into a service management principle around customer satisfaction, which in a domain level, so for instance, providing support for a product or a service, may translate into a principle of fulfilling customer expectations, where an individual that maybe provides support for that product or service, they need to be able to answer the telephone quickly, or when they've made an appointment with a customer, they may need to be on time, and a host of others. These are just some examples. So you find this cascade of principles also through the organization. What's actually quite interesting, and I must admit this was a little bit new for me, but as we started talking through the stuff when we wrote the book, I realized that even policy cascades throughout the organization. So we tend to say that policy is a mechanism to provide direction to the organization, and that's absolutely correct. But most of the times, organizations use that at a strategic level. When we define policy like that, we actually answer the question, what is it that we need to achieve, and why is it that it's important to us? But as you most probably know from some practical experience, not all of your policies answers the what and why questions. And that's because it depends on where the policy need to take effect. So you will have a high-level policy that's operating at a strategic level, tactical level, and an operational level. The high-level policy will apply to the whole of the organization. The tactical level most probably to a line of business or a unit or whatever. And then operational level policy may even apply to a team. So it's actually quite interesting on the slide to note the words that we use. So in the first one, what and why, but at the tactical level, you start saying who's going to do it also. At an operational level, your policy actually becomes very close to supporting processes and procedures, and saying you have to do this. So these three elements are really important in terms of giving direction for the organization so that we can properly act upon it. What we realized is that we needed some way to have a holistic view of all of these elements. And what we've done is we've defined a concept called organizational portfolio. Now, the organizational portfolio is not a product portfolio. It is not a It's not a project portfolio, it's not an investment portfolio. Our view of a portfolio is slightly different. We say that the portfolio is the place where you can have a view of all value streams within the organization, end to end, that's used to create value for consumers in the form of either products or services. And it looks something like this. So there may be multiple value streams, and in different value streams, you may have multiple products or services. These value streams are supported by organizational resources and capabilities that ensures that the value stream can deliver value, and the portfolio is also then, I suppose, supported or underpinned by the fact that we've defined service management principles and goals and objectives for the organization. So each one of these products or services you will always have a view in the portfolio of its current state, and the state will change. So as we go through the normal life cycle of a product or a service, the view within the portfolio should also change until we've actually decided to retire a product or a service. As you hopefully by now know, is that VeriSM is a service management approach for the digital age, but it is an organizational approach. It's not an approach for just a part of the organization. So to a large extent, we talk about this issue of digital transformation, but it's important to realize that digital transformation is a profound transformation of the business or organization, its activities, its processes, everything that we basically do. And this change that we need to facilitate, or this transformation, is really about understanding how the organization fits into society as it changes, and how the organization then makes best use of the way that they look after consumers in a strategic and prioritized way. This implies that there should be a shift in thinking within the organization, and in general, we say that shift should include things like building competencies and capabilities in the organization to be able to be more agile, people-orientated, to innovate more, to be consumer-centric. Yes, we will still streamline. Yes, we will still look at efficiency, but the focus should move more towards creating more value or new value for the organization. And as such, we need to look for opportunities that we can change the way the organization presents itself and its products and its services to society as a whole, and actually challenge ourselves to not keep on doing what we've always been doing. So in general, when we talk to people about digital transformation, the shifts that are mentioned are typically the things on the screen at the moment. So consumer focus, understanding what technology can do, understanding data, leadership changes, transformational. And that to a large extent is how the book is structured, or the first part of the book is structured, is to help you to think about the shift that needs to happen within your organization so that you can transform to a digital organization, or a organization that's able to provide digital products or services. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to physically go through the structure of the book, which more or less aligns to these elements on the screen. So VeriSM is, I suppose we can say, it's about a new strategic mindset for an organization. And I quite like this quote: question everything, learn something, and answer nothing. And I think that the main thing here is question everything that we do at the moment, understand why we do it. Quite often in organizations, if we actually start questioning what we're doing, the answer is because that's the way that we've always been doing it, and that's no longer a good enough answer. If we've learned that from the exercise, it's already valuable. So by questioning, our position within society as an organization, we actually come up with some really good ideas about how we can keep the organization relevant. For me, answer nothing doesn't mean don't answer anything, but don't assume that you know the answers to everything, because everything will change tomorrow. So remember, we said that the focus of this first part of the book is actually the strategic planning bit, and that's what we're going to talk about. Yeah, so this is sort of changing the picture slightly from the graphic that's presented in the book. You know, so we've got consumer needs, but we need to understand those consumer needs and translate that by all the stuff that we do within the organization into products and services that facilitates outcomes for our consumer. So consumer centricity is at the heart of VeriSM, and really, really important. Important word here is the word outcome. I think many organizations struggle with this issue of customers or consumers asking them to do something. They do it, and then the consumer is not happy about it. And I think it's not only the customer that's to blame. To a large extent, it's the service provider or the product provider that's to blame, because our job is to understand how customers or consumers will use our products and services, and what are the things that they want to happen once that is done. So features is not the important thing, it's the thing that it's the outcome that's important. It's the thing that is achieved when we consume a product or a service. And organizations really need to hone in and develop skills to be able to understand that. One of the ways that we can do that, remember previously I talked about value streams within the portfolio. Now, the way that we understand value streams is by using the Cyborg technique. Once again, yeah, it's something that we borrowed from Lean. It's been there for years. The only difference is that we add the end bit, and we say it's really important to understand that Cyborg is good to do, but you must always check the output within context of the consumer to understand how the product or service will be used, why it is used, just as important, and what is the desired result, because it's actually the desired result that makes customers or consumers happy with the products or services that we provide. The next thing that we need to realize is that we're living in a world of fast-changing technology. Technology has changed everything around us. It's here to stay, and in fact, the pace will just accelerate. For me, one of the main jobs of a CIO today is to help the business to understand what is possible with technology. So I know there's a bunch of people that's talking about the art of the possible at the moment within the technology sphere. I don't like using that term because it was actually coined by Otto von Bismarck when he used the term to explain that you can use politics to manipulate people into accepting anything. And I don't think that's the intent here. But we do need to understand what is possible with technology, because that to a large extent will influence the way that we as an organization transform ourselves and look for opportunities to create new value for consumers. If you thought this was a piece of modern art, it's not. This is actually about the deep and fundamental role that data, information, and knowledge is playing in organizations now. And organizations must really become masters at understanding data, translating that into information and knowledge, which they can act upon. We need to make informed decisions. We need to make faster decisions. The reality is, if we as an organization don't, then our competitors will. So that's also a really, really important thing that we need to think about. there's a chapter in the book that deals specifically with knowledge management, and would like to take this opportunity just to thank Simone Moore and April Allen that contributed 99% of the content of that chapter. Really a great job, and I would encourage you to immerse yourself in that material. Just getting back to data, I also want to take this opportunity to thank Richard de Kock, who has done most of our data analysis from all of our surveys that we got back that we used within the publication. And also Richard was a fundamental contributor of the part of the book that deals with digital transformation strategies and approaches. The next thing that we need to bear in mind is that organizations need to look differently in future. They will look differently in future. We can already see that they look different today, the organizations who started to make these transformations, and they need to behave differently. And that behavioral shift actually starts with leadership within the organization. One of the main concepts in the chapter about leadership and digital leadership in the new is this concept of a servant leader. And the servant leader is the person who enables the organization and people within the organization to excel. Just bear in mind that most employees today are knowledge workers. We employ them because they've got specialized skills and capabilities, and actually we must leave them as the leadership of the organization to do the things that they're qualified to do. Our job is not to tell them what to do. Our job is to make sure that they excel at what they do, because we properly support them and we help them whenever they get stuck. So servant leadership, really important. This chapter in the book, I just want to thank Peter Brooks, who wrote this chapter in the book, a stunning effort. Once again, I would really encourage that you immerse yourself in this topic in the book. Then we've got a chapter that talks about collaboration and communication. This is the work of Jerry Sweeney and Patrick Bulger. I suppose you've all heard before that we need to break down silos within the organization, and it's becoming more important that we actually do that. We need to work as multidisciplinary teams in value streams, but across the whole of the value stream, in ensuring that we create value for our consumers. This collaboration, to a large extent, is dependent on good communication. Awesome chapter. We give some really good ideas around how to develop stronger collaboration in organizations and how to improve communication within organizations. The next bit that we then talk about is, because of all the things that I've just mentioned, by now you must probably realize that organizations need to change. And there's a chapter on the book that deals with organizational change management. Specifically, I would like to thank Karen Ferris, who wrote this part of the book. Once again, sterling effort, and really something that I encourage you to go and read through in detail. Don't be scared. It's actually not that difficult. And in fact, if we as leadership within the organization act upon this guidance, the end result is an organization where employees are happier, more fulfilled, more productive. So, it's not as hard as it actually looks, but it takes time. I think the advice here is don't try and do everything overnight. A transformational approach means that we do it bit by bit over a period of time. Then we talk about transformational approaches, or the issue of digital transformation. Here we've built a model based on largely work that was done by MIT and Capgemini. Sort of creating a hybrid view of different views of the world and the world of digital transformation. You know, there's people out there that say that we've been transforming for 50 years because the digitization of society started 50 years ago. We don't view that as transformation. Yeah, we see that as digital optimization. And we're not saying that digital optimization is a bad thing. It's necessary and it needs to continue within the organization. But the rules of the game are different for digital optimization versus digital transformation. So really what we define as digital transformation is where we start thinking about products and services with the consumer at the heart of it, or when we think about creating a new future that doesn't exist. Now, we tend to think that this is a new thing, but actually it's not a new thing. You know, industrials in the 20th century has already struggled with this. Right at the beginning of the century, when Henry Ford said, if I asked my consumers what do they want, they would have told me faster horses. And clearly that's not how society advances as a whole. So there's different approaches to actually tackling any one of these three streams. And there's some guidance in terms of how do you do it yourself? What do you need to be careful of if you want to outsource some of these issues? And how do you create a hybrid approach, which most organizations will do. So if we do all of this stuff, the outcome is an organization that is agile, people-orientated, innovative, consumer-centric. This looks familiar? Yes, that's the things that we started off with. So the last bit of my presentation, I just quickly want to tell you about the tools that we make available for you to be able to use during this journey. So we give you advice in terms of when is it best to transform and when is it best to optimize. What we then do is we did a mapping between different problem states and these approaches using Kahneman, and giving you guidance to understand when you're faced with a specific issue or problem or challenge, which tools and techniques should you use, number one, because it matches the problem thinking method, and which approach, transformational approach, would most probably be more successful within that specific context. So really some cool stuff to read through. Then we move into really practical stuff. We take that guidance, we've turned it into a table, you know, saying, you know, for optimization, for customer focus or consumer focus, and for future focus. High-level approaches that you can use, and we've identified essentially 4 here that we think is quite useful. Lean Startup, a book by Eric Ries, really good resource if you think about creating the future. There's an approach called business innovation circles, works well within the transformational space. And then, you know, doing transformation using traditional or more traditional project management methods, whether it's waterfall or agile. As you can see, we've given you an idea what is most probably the most appropriate. And then underneath that, we've zoomed in and said, you know, for each one of these approaches, here are some tools, tips, and techniques that you can go and use to actually come up with a strategy for new products and services. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly just run through at a very high level some of the important ones. The first important one for me is a Lean Startup. In essence, it's an innovation approach when we actually don't know what the future is. And the only way that we can define what the future is to, at a rapid pace, experiment and iterate. And that's really well described within this book by Eric Ries, and I would recommend that you actually acquire the book also. Then we've got the business innovation circle approach. sometimes even used as an innovation process. It can be used for anyone, but most probably it's more useful within the transformational space. There are some tools and techniques defined within the approach also, but the approach lends itself to use any tool that you want to use at the appropriate time. So maybe also something interesting to explore. Now let's quickly zoom into some of the physical tools that you may use. We've said that the value stream is important. So clearly, understanding value streams is really important for us. And we recommend that you do value stream mapping, but not for the reason that most people do value stream mapping. Most people do value stream mapping to identify areas of waste. For us, value stream mapping is a really awesome tool to understand how everybody in the organization is involved with creating products and services. What is their role? How do they contribute? How does information flow through the organization? And yes, obviously, at the end of the day, we can look at how we can improve that. Understanding consumer needs and how we can create value or new value, or augment value for our consumers. Yeah, we've given you an example of a technique used by Strategizer. It's called the value proposition canvas, and this is really to understand how and what the realities are that our consumers are facing. So what are the jobs that they typically do with the products and services that we provide? What are their pains and what are the things that they expected to do? And based on that, we can then really define a product and service that can be helpful and reach the outcomes that the consumer requires. Another useful tool is VUCA. VUCA is very risk focused. So if you're in an environment where you need to play it safe, most probably a technique that would be really helpful for yourself. Understanding, complex, volatile, and markets with lots of ambiguity, and specifically, as I mentioned, where you're most probably in an industry where you need to focus more on managing risk. So most probably financial services would be an example where this technique can be quite useful. The next technique, and there's a ton of these techniques and tools, guys. We can't cover everything. I'm just showing some of the things that I think is important, is to understand platforms and the role that platforms plays in the new economy. Now, platform mapping is a technique that you can use to understand if and how your organization can use platforms and what your role within that platform society or ecosystem should be or can be, and how you fit into that broader value stream or value chain. Then another technique for me that's exceptionally helpful to use is not only to understand what customers want from us, so understand the outcomes that they want to achieve, but also helping us to understand the experience that they've got when they interact with us, either in the procurement of a product or a service, or the use of a product and a service. So customer experience mapping is an awesome tool and technique to use and provides absolutely awesome insights. The thing about this technique is you start with the consumer and then you start zooming in deeper and deeper into the organization to everybody that actually plays a in the production or the delivery of products. Tools and techniques are really awesome resources. We've described them in a book at a high level, and I would encourage you to look at that, see which of these you would find useful, and then delve deeper and dig deeper and develop skills and capabilities around those. So that brings me to the end of my part of the presentation. Just quickly before I hand over to Martin, are there any quick questions that you would like me to address at this moment in time?
we would like to recommend you to use the questions that are available on the right side of your screen. Then you can drop all your questions over there that your questions are going to be addressed. Okay, if you need some time to drop down your questions, no worry, we are going to have time, and then in the end of the presentation we can take over all the questions and address the questions.
Perfect. So Adam, I'm going to hand over to you.
Okay, so Martin, I'm going to make you presenter right now. And it's done.
There we go. So you can see my screen?
Yes,
Yep.
perfect.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, Johan. And thank you also to Claire and Suzanne and everyone on the VeriSM team for inviting us. We very much appreciate it. My name is Martijn Adams. I have been working in service management, ESM, SIAM for pretty much the past 20 years, mostly doing implementations, both tooling and organizational change. And since 2015, I am the general manager for the EMEA region for me. For me is a enterprise service management and SIAM tooling provider. So it's basically a service management tool, but with a specific focus on collaboration, and therefore serving both the enterprise service management market and the SIAM market very much. The way that for me is built, it is very easy for us to make content packages available. And a content package is something that you can easily upload into existing systems, or you can just purchase for me with the content package included in it, and then you have the functionality available immediately. And basically what you do with such a content package, a good example is probably the GDPR package that we released earlier this year. You upload it into your environment and you automatically have a whole set of templates, procedures, processes, workflows available to support, in that case, GDPR. Now we do understand that one size doesn't fit all, so you basically upload the package, you have a very nice starting point, and from there you can adjust certain pieces or grow further from that point. We've done the same for VeriSM, so there is an official VeriSM content package available now. And basically, if we look at the VeriSM, the picture that you all know by now, I guess, then you see that we cover all the activities that happen in there. And from a for me perspective, we do that in our demand registration part, then move on to the project and portfolio management, where we support the different steps with templates, with workflows, with project templates, etc. Moving into the operation part with the well-known processes like incident, request fulfillment, change management, and many more. And finally, there's a number of recurring reviews automatically available that will allow you to measure customer satisfaction. We'll do your service level reviews. We'll do a yearly compliancy check on your governance. Review the service management principles every 6 months or 12 months or whatever works for your organization. So this is basically how the different areas in for me map to the different parts of VeriSM. So I just want to show you a few examples what that would look like in the application itself. So here you see a project template. So this is not an actual service that is going through the whole VeriSM process, not an actual idea that is being developed. This is just the template and what it would look like. So if you would actually start using this because someone has a great new idea and you would like to see where you can take this, then you could use this template to actually create the workflow, create a project in for me that is going to help you to make sure that you go through all the steps, that you do the governance compliancy check, that you look at the service management principles. Are we in line with the guardrails that we have set up there? Do we take all the steps in the define phase, etc.? So the different tasks that make up such a workflow could typically be something like this. So all these tasks that you see in there are actually very specific tasks that ask for very specific information in order for you to fulfill the things you need to do and gather all the information that you need to gather. So this one we see, for example, the gap analysis. At a certain point in time, you want to do a gap analysis. What are we currently capable of as an organization? That part you have already registered in the application using the management mesh. But now you're going to look at, okay, what is it that I need for this specific new idea that I have and that I want to bring to market? So the task goes out to someone to actually do that gap analysis, and the result could be something like this, where the management mesh is now included in the task and is showing where we have issues for bringing this new idea to market, because we have gaps in certain areas. If we have actually brought it into production, we are providing it to people, then we want to make sure that we continuously check that and continuously check if we're still doing a good job. Are customers happy? Can we improve? So there's a number of recurring reviews that are available in the system that will automatically start the moment that you have released a new service, a new idea into production. So service management reviews are part of that, and you'll see that it automatically tracks all the information necessary to do that service management review. Here we can even see that there's a number of underpinning SLAs for services provided by other providers. So we can quickly see how much we are influenced by others for delivering our service. How is our customer satisfaction? So we can run reviews on that. We can see all the information about that. Schedule reviews, have them automatically scheduled if we drop below a certain percentage. All to make sure that we don't forget about the customer review, the customer satisfaction pieces. So when we are working on bringing the service live, so we followed all the steps, so we've done, we are ready to provide the service. At that very moment, the service automatically becomes available in the service catalog, and can be used by people. So here you see the My Health wearable service, for example. That is a service that we just brought live. It is automatically added to the service catalog for all those people that are using it in our organization. Obviously, if this would be a consumer service, you would probably only see that single service in our company's website. But in this example, it's basically a business with multiple services. It's also added automatically to our service portfolio. That's what we see over here. So you see the My Health wearable, it's number 8 or something, or 9. But we can also see that in our service catalog, we actually, or our service portfolio, we see services from different service providers. And the My Health wearable service was added to this one. We've made sure that knowledge management is applied to it, so we don't just release it without anything around it. We've made sure that the package is complete, so there are checks for knowledge management. Did you actually look at that? Did you make sure that you added knowledge to the package and make that available to customers, or at least check that perhaps there is no knowledge yet, but it is a step to follow to make sure that it is available. And that finally brings us to a service description for, in this case, again, this My Health wearable service. But now the mesh is showing us the capabilities that we now have for applying this service. And that also made sure that we had to update the management mesh for the organization capabilities, but because of this new idea that we released, we also got new capabilities as an organization. So one of the steps in the workflows is to update the organization's capabilities also, because they have changed based on this new product that we have released. Interesting for this one, by the way, is that it clearly shows that SIAM was something that we absolutely needed, which we can see in the management mesh here. And that is interesting again for me, because again, that's one of our core focuses, that we want to make it possible for different providers and customers to work together seamlessly without all kind of integrations. So on the left hand side, you see an example where again that My Health service is underpinned by a whole number of different services that we get from internal and external suppliers, and the red dot shows me that actually our external supplier GlobalNet is causing the issue right now. But it nicely reflects how the management mesh shows that SIAM is important. And then if you look at how the service is actually implemented in real life, you see that coming back by that long list of underpinning SLAs, proving that indeed the SIAM part is taken care of also. And with that, I would like to give it back to you, Johan or Claire. If there are any questions, just let me know, reach out to me or reach out to anyone from the VeriSM team. They all have my details also, and I'd be happy to tell you more about it.
Martijn, could you please provide your email address? Could you say to the audience, please?
Yes, it's martijn.adams@forme.com. I will also put it in the chat.
Okay, thank you very much.
Just spell
Johan?
that, Martijn, because not everybody is going to know that it's IJ.
Yeah, the first name is difficult, right? martijn.adams@forme.com.
Thank you very much.
Awesome.
Johan,
are there any other questions at this moment?
No, there isn't any other question. Actually, I have two, but as I know that these two, it's going to be answered on the next slide, so I'm going to hold for you guys to explain the rest of the presentation, because then it's going to be answered. And then if it is the case, then I go back to the questions, okay? Johan, I will make you
so
presenter.
you can just make me a presenter again?
Yes.
So while we're doing that and we're waiting for Claire,
Sigrid is going to take over the Claire's speech, because Claire is facing some internet connections issues. So Sigrid's going to speak on her behalf.
Sigrid, before you go, would you give me a moment, please?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Guys, this is sort of the end of the journey for the development team, and I would really like to take this opportunity to thank Claire and Suzanne and Sigrid and the rest of the team for having confidence in actually involving me in this project. It was absolutely awesome for me to work with everybody, and there's a special word of thanks that I want to let go out is Doug Tether was, whenever I was unsure about something, he was my go-to man. I could throw any idea of him and he would always come back with a good answer. He was also the guy who was sitting behind the development of the organizational portfolio as it stands at the moment. So once again, for everybody within the VeriSM community from my side, I just want to say thank you very, very much.
Yes, that's very good to hear. Well, and I'm Sigrid Jansen here of IFTC. IFTC, the body behind VeriSM. And Claire is really frustrated at the moment because she wanted to say something for herself, but she's suffering from some broadband issues, and these will be fixed end of the day. So she really couldn't join, but we had some contact via WhatsApp. And I know what she wanted to say, because she's also very, very proud of, well, the product that is here now, and really proud on the collaboration and the involvement of so many people. Because, well, imagine the lead author team has been working together with the 3 of them, so Suzanne, Johan, and Claire, but together with 70 contributors from around the world, with all different backgrounds, and, well, all of the collaboration and work and discussions they had resulted in this second publication of more than 450 pages of really good content. So that's really something to be proud of. And it's not only theoretical content, but also lots of practical examples and also early adopter stories. So something to be really looking forward to be able to read. So I know she wanted to say thank you. I also know she wanted to say something about please stay involved and keep in contact. There is the VeriSM.global website, and that's something really to well, keep an eye on, because that's the place where we will put all the news, but also where you can leave your message behind and try to connect with other people. Also, there's the LinkedIn, the official VeriSM official LinkedIn group, and there you can share your ideas with others. So that's what she really wanted to say. Please keep sharing and please keep in contact. Yeah, maybe something about the books. I saw some questions about it also. Well, the title of the book, VeriSM Unwrapped and Applied, that's a second publication that will be launched October 1st. The ebook will be ready then, and we will have some sort of celebration at Fusion in the US. But from this moment, after this webinar, you can already start pre-ordering if you would like. Just go to the VeriSM.global website. You can see the tab with the official publications, and you can start ordering if you would like. In case you would like to know at this moment already a bit more about the content, also go to the website and you can see some news item there with also the table of contents. So you can already see what is on the 450 pages, more or less. What else? Yeah, something about a really nice promotion that we will have to celebrate this news. On October 1st, there will be 1 day, 24 hours of a free download of the very nice VeriSM Pocket Guide. So please, well, there will be a download code, etc. We will put it on LinkedIn, on VeriSM, on the website, so you will be able to make advantage of that. Then around lots of events coming months, so there will be some contributors giving presentations about VeriSM, and sometimes there will be people of IFTC or one of the partners involved, like Exin, APMG, BCS, Van Haren Publishing. Also, we will be around around the globe the coming months. Well, I think, Johan, if there's nothing else you have to say, then it's really time to finish on time even. And well, thanks so much for the lead author team, to Johan, Claire, and Suzanne. And today, also thank you to Martijn as a special guest, and also for his contribution to the book. Ademar for hosting, for moderating this webinar. Well, and for all the contributors that worked so hard to make this possible.
Thank you very much, Sigrid. I noticed that Johan is facing some issues with his audio right now. But well, he's saying thank you very much to everybody. He would be really happy to see everybody engaged with the VeriSM publications and trainings and certifications. And also, I would like to remind you that the trainings and certifications, they are going to start on October 23, because I saw some questions about that. So if you're looking for trainings and official certifications about VeriSM professional level, that it's going to be based on the VeriSM Unwrapped and Applied, it's going to be available via the major EIs, Exin, BCS, and APMG on October 23, okay? And also I provided on the chat the contact of Martin. So if you would like to copy and paste over here on the chat, please, it's available to you. So thank you very much for all your support, all the audience with us. Thank you very much on behalf of XE and IFTC. See you on the next webinar. Bye-bye.